Welcome to ZBook's Successful Creators Podcast. And with me today, I have Dane Deutsch, the author of Coach Ability, The Tricycle Effect. Hi, Dane. How you doing?
Hey, good, Eric. How are you?
Not bad.
All
Like I
right.
said, I'm in Hamburg. Weather's terrible. I hope it's better where you're at.
We just had snow yesterday, and I think right now it's 4 degrees out. So
Well,
probably
snow's
not
better
better
than
weather,
rain.
but that's true. You guys have had a lot of rain. So, yeah.
Yeah. So in the north, we don't get as much snow. Whereas no, the mountains are in the south in Bavaria. That's where the good snowboarding is. But
Yeah.
up here in the north, we're very close to the ocean, so it's called Schmuddelwetter. It's just sleet and nasty.
Wow.
So
Yeah, we
anyway,
didn't even get a whole inch. It's just covered the ground is all. So, but it's very cold. So
what city are you in?
we're in northwest Wisconsin, a little city called Rice Lake. So there's about 9,000 population. It's not real big.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, but
that's
it
where we've been for the last 35 years. Yeah.
gets really cold there, though, huh?
Yeah, absolutely does. Yeah.
Is there a mountain nearby?
No mountains nearby here. The
Ah,
furthest you got to go north is to Spirit Mountain in Duluth, Minnesota, and it's not very high.
yeah. So tell us about yourself. What did give us the skivvy, the background, and what got you started in writing?
Yeah, so my background a little bit when I was younger, 7 to 11 or so, I actually grew up in Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela, right during the time when Castro had closed the borders of Cuba, and some of the kids and their dads got out, and so a lot of my classmates were actually Cubans. We were in an English school, English speaking school in Caracas. Really, really love my time there. Lots of great memories. Just really, really enjoyed it. And then we came back, settled down in Minnesota. So I tell people I still speak Minnesotan. And then you end up with Brainerd, Minnesota, graduated from high school. And then I went to Bemidji State University, got my degree in physical education and health, and also went back over to Superior, Wisconsin, which is north of where we live right now, right on Lake Superior. And I got my 2 more years of pre-med and got my commission in the Air Force. So that's how I ended up as an Air Force officer. If you had calculus, they just stuck you in IT. That was back in the 80s, right? So that
Yeah.
was your ticket to that. I was trying to go into to be a medical doctor and it didn't work out because I was tired of living off of, they had a work program and we were tired of living on, poverty basically. And so we went back and I did the 2 years to and then said, "Hey, enough. Let's just go in active duty." And they put me in IT. So I
What
ended up
year?
being an IT guy. That was 1980.
Oh, wow.
Two.
I went in 86, so I was
Okay.
after you. Yeah.
Yeah.
1980. Those were
Yeah.
what would we say now? Prehistoric
Yeah. Yeah.
IT internet days or something? Wow.
That's a great way to put it. Yes, it was very, very beginnings of IT. Even though there was other IT out there, it wasn't like in the commercial sector or even in the military. We didn't have computers on everybody's desks in those days.
No.
Zenith made a lot of computers, and so they did a lot of contracts with the military. So in 1987, I did 5 years in Turkey, 3 tours. I started at Incirlik, which is where we flew most of the sorties for the first Gulf War. Then I moved to Izmir, got a promotion, and became a commander at a remote communications site, uh, long haul tropospheric scatter radios, and was there for almost a year and a half, I think. And then the
Okay,
last
wait a
years,
minute.
yeah,
Long haul tropospheric scatter radios? What
yeah.
is that?
So we were all wireless in the 80s, Eric. We
Wow.
had
In the
no,
80s.
if we laid copper in the ground, it was gone in the morning because copper was a black market item. Yeah. So we
Yeah,
were
I know.
all
I've heard of
wireless
that.
in the 80s. I mean, we were 30 years ahead technologically of where people are out here, just
Mhm.
within the last 7, maybe 8, 10 years here in the United States, at least. So very interesting because part of it was is we would have to shoot radios across from one mountaintop to another in order to be able to get communication all the way across the country of Turkey, right? So when I went to Ankara, I was handpicked by President Reagan's communications director of the White House, who was coming over to get his first star and was the group commander. And he handpicked me to run all of the IT for the country. So anything air traffic control, mainframe, mini microcomputers, telephones, radar, television, that was all my responsibility. At 13 and more remote communication sites, about 1,500 people at one point. But it was really a great experience because the colonel and I, we were actually shooting Z100's first mobile laptops across Motorola's first mobile phone in Turkey in 1987. Yeah.
Wow, you were really connected.
We were very connected, and
Interesting.
it was called ARPANET in those days.
Mhm.
And we had what we called a DDN card. So you logged into your ARPANET with the Defense Digital Network card. And Novell 1.1 was out. Most people don't even know what Novell is anymore.
Yeah.
Big worldwide global company that didn't do well because I think they just didn't read the signs of the times and what was happening. But on top of that, it was all about growth probably, and not really helping to grow the image and so forth either at that time. So
Yeah, Novell was big for a while. I remember
yep,
we had them on our laptops at work, and Enterprise Solutions or something. I don't remember,
yeah,
but cool, man. So
yeah. You don't even most people don't even know who Novell is anymore.
I remember that little symbol in the corner. I
Yep,
remember.
yeah, yep, yep.
But what were you? You were a commander. Were you major? What was your rank then in the Air
I was
Force?
actually I was a 1-year captain when I became the commander at this remote communication site. And then when the colonel that chose me to be running the country, we moved to Ankara, which is the capital of Turkey.
Mhm.
I was still only a 2-year captain and sitting in a colonel's slot, which was really interesting because part of what I bring out in my book, Coachability, is that real good coaches, and we should all be coaching leaders in our organizations to not only follow on with us, but also have better engagement and teamwork and all of the other things that come with it. And we'll talk about character skills. In this case, this top-ranking Air Force officer that was in Turkey, which was not my colonel, it was a different one, asked me to come over to his office one time because I said, I got offered this job, and I didn't know who he was. I had just thought he was in civilian clothes on a weekend at church, and I thought, I'll just ask for prayer for this because I got to make this big decision. Do I want this job that's going to run the whole country? Oh my goodness, right? That's crazy. Especially I was a 2-year captain, going to sit in a colonel slot, and I'm going to be dealing with colonels and generals all across the country,
Mhm.
right? And I'll be
Yeah,
making decisions for a lot of them. So he said,
on
hey,
the
come
hot
on over.
seat.
Yeah, he said, come on over to my office and we'll sit down. I'll talk to you, Dan. I think you'll do fine. So I did. I went over there. Well, when I got to the building, I knew right away this is a Turkish building. When I walked in and I asked for his name, it was like in the movies, everything stopped. People quit walking, they quit talking. It was just like, boom, stopped, silent. I
Mhm.
was like, what did I just do? Right? I signed in, and then they told me you have to wait. One person ran out, and pretty quick, I see these stairs with nice, bright red carpet on them, and this guy is walking down the stairs in his uniform. I had no idea he was the highest ranking Air Force officer in Turkey. And he took me up to his office, sat down, and he really coached and mentored me. And it was because he was, even if he was the highest ranking officer, he wasn't afraid to come down there on your level, right?
Mhm.
Vulnerability and authenticity and genuineness were all part of his shtick. I mean, that's who he was. And it was so very beneficial for me in making that decision, which I did ultimately take the job. And I have no idea if he put out the word in Turkey that, hey, Dane's going to be the chief of maintenance. Don't misbehave. Take good care of him, to all the other colonels and commanders and stuff. I don't think so, but it was fun just being able to see a high ranking person who was not thinking more of themselves than they should, willing to serve a lower ranking person.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. That brings up a lot of things. I don't know where we want to go next after the Air Force and but wait a minute. You went up that mountain. That's and then you got into coaching and writing books. Let's go to the mountain first. And while we're still in the Air Force. So
Yeah.
you had this thing, and I got to tell you, see, I'm a pilot or ex-pilot, whatever. I used to fly sailplanes and stuff, and you guys were going up this mountain without oxygen. You
Yep.
know that in an aircraft, the oxygen masks pop out at 14,000 feet, right?
Yep.
And you guys were going to 17,000 feet
Yep.
without oxygen masks.
We
Tell
were.
us about that.
Oh, it was an amazing experience, honestly. I mean, I was the commander at a place called Yemenlar in the very western side of Turkey that overlooked Greece, the Mediterranean, and it was just really interesting because all the people that came together for that climb, none of them were technical climbers. None of them had conditioned even, right? And yet we were going up to 17,000 feet. So, of course, it took us 3 days to get to the peak, but we almost lost 2 people, one due to altitude sickness and one due to hypothermia on the glacier. And so we had to deal with those kinds of challenges on the way up, as well as 21 terrorists that were on the mountain at the time. And we never encountered them, but it was a threat. It was a risk. So it was really a great climb. In my book, I talk all about some of the different things that I learned. But boy, when you're trying to scale a mountain that height, and a lot of people use Mount Ararat as a training mountain for the 7 that they're climbing, right? The 7 tallest in the world. That was a great experience to help me understand better what is real teamwork. For instance, when you get up into high pressure and low oxygen, higher altitudes, your real personality and character come out, right? And people were hallucinating and having heart palpitations and all this kind of stuff. I mean, at one point, one person sat down and the crevasse in the ice was only a foot wide. They wouldn't jump it because to them, it looked like it was way further than they could jump. And so I had to do a lot of coaching up there to get them to get across a 1 foot wide crevasse and get on to the peak, because after the noontime, the glacier's being, hit by the sun, it starts to move. And then the dangerous part is actually the climb down. It wasn't as dangerous going up as it is going down. And a lot of people don't know that Mount Ararat is actually an extinct volcano. So when you take a step, you don't go up that step, you're going to slide back maybe a foot or so in a lot of cases. And so it's very dangerous. And James Irwin, the astronaut, got injured up there one year. I met him the year before.
Noah's Ark, huh?
Yes. Yep.
Crazy. Did they ever find it?
Nope. Nobody's ever found it yet. At least that's what they say. But this is the Kurdish. They believe that Ararat, which in Turkish, by the way, is called Arida. Da means mountain. Ari means pain. So it literally means mountain of pain.
Yeah, that's so mountain of pain.
Yeah, you could have a clear blue sky, Eric, on one day, and within 15 minutes, all of a sudden it's surrounded with clouds and you got lightning bolts shooting at you. It's just absolutely an amazing, amazing place. Very wild, right?
And that was like that's where your coachability, where you started coaching people, or that was like your first coaching? Or?
No, that was just one of the things that I realized after I started up. Oh, this is not going to be like a normal hike. I mean, the Turks had advertised it as a tourist, just a hike, tough hike. It was way more than that. It was a technical climb. And our guide, after we got back down after those 3 days, he said, you know what, this was a dangerous team to have taken. And it was, but we all got back down safely. So, but yes, that wasn't my first coaching experience. I'd coached back in high school as well as in college, different teams and things like that. And then I met my wife in high school in gymnastics. She was really the gymnast. I'm a professional gymnastics coach now, but in reality, she was the gymnast. And we've been coaching gymnastics for probably 45 years, maybe now.
Okay. So you've been, well, that was after the Air Force, right?
Before and after. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell us about your book then.
Yeah. So, I started out with my first book is called The Tricycle Effect. I used to use a 3-legged stool as my explanation for why we need to have character, competence, and courage. Those are the 3 parts of that. Well, part of it was that the stool was static, right? Didn't move. There was nothing there. You couldn't demonstrate anything with it because it was just sitting there. And so one of my people said, you should use a tricycle, Dane. I thought, oh, that's a great idea, because we coach kids, right? And we're all adults, yes, but we're still big kids, if you think about it, right? Yeah. Our personality when we were 3 to 7 years old is still the same personality we have now. Oh, yeah, we can cover it up better. We can hide it better. We can make it look different, but it's still the same personality. But character and character skills, that's different. We can actually grow and coach those. So a big wheel on the tricycle, I call the character skills wheel. And I call it character skills. So think about all of the actual, on the front wheel of the tricycle, you have all of the individual parts that hold that wheel together, right?
Yeah.
And so you have like trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, loyalty, empathy. Oh my goodness, empathy is a big one today. You hear a lot of people talking about empathy, but they don't really know how to coach empathy, right? Loyalty is another one. You want better engagement for your team at work, the character skills are what are going to get you that better engagement. It's not because you're telling them to meet a bigger quota or just telling them to do better, to communicate better. That's not going to do it. But when people know that you care about them, it's a whole different ballgame. So that first one, the character skills wheel with all the spokes in the front, and then there's two wheels in the back. They're balanced, right? There's that gymnastics coach in me again, right? Balanced
Yeah.
wheels. They should be about the same size. One is what I call the technical wheel. The other one is called the people skills wheel. So if you think about that, the people skills wheel has things like leadership, teamwork, communication. The technical skill might be, oh, can you do a podcast? Can you bake a cake? Can you drive a car, right? Technical things. And then the seat on the tricycle is called the seat of courage. If you think of a tricycle, the handlebars are connected to the front wheel and your pedals are connected to the front wheel, that character skills wheel. So I like to tell people you get your momentum and your direction in life from your character skill wheel. But it still takes the person with courage in the seat to make the right decision at the right time for the right reason, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the tricycle effect.
Nice. I'm looking at your book right here on the other screen. There's one thing missing though. The flames from getting burned in your first lessons of leadership. It's like, where's the charcoal and stuff? You
Hey,
could have died over.
I got plenty of scars, believe me. There's
Yeah,
lots of
yeah,
scars.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, so I think that authenticity helps to write these books, right? My first one, I just wrote it with the big tricycle on the front and gave lots of personal stories from coaching, school, teaching in public schools, coaching in our gym, my military background, my mom and dad, my sister. My sister was one of the top Walmart drivers in the United States for a couple of years on the Walmart road team. And so there was lots of really, really interesting stories in there. But I felt after I got done with that book, I felt something was still missing. I had to go back and think about what it was. And after having been in our IT company for almost 25 years, I realized, hey, what's missing is these CEOs are not all the time operating with good character skills. Some of them are egotistical, arrogant, and that kind of thing. And that does not bode well for business in terms of getting a business to be able to, be profitable. KRW International out of Minneapolis and St. Paul has statistics now over the last 20 some years that they've been doing research on this, that folks that have good character skills that are at the helm of their businesses actually get a very much bigger return on investment than those that don't focus on character skills. So I thought, all right, I got to go back and write a book on coachability, because these CEOs were not coachable. They weren't humble. They weren't vulnerable like that colonel we talked about. So that authenticity doesn't come through, and there's no connection with their people in a lot of cases. It's not all of them, of course, but there's a large majority of them out there that it's all about the bottom line, right?
And
dollar sign. That's it.
is that the second book or the first book?
That's the second book, that coachability book. So I call it the coachability and the tricycle effect, because I'm bringing that tricycle effect image of the tricycle into coachability. And I primarily focus on three things: how to coach yourself, how to coach others, and how to be vulnerable and humble enough to allow others to coach you. So those are the three parts to my book. A lot of it, probably the most of it I wrote, was on coaching yourself. How do you self-talk, right? What kind of scripts do you run in your brain every day? How do you act when someone potentially, offends you versus react?
Give us
all
an
that
example.
Kind of. So as an example, and this is a great one that happened to me, I was in one store one day, and my wife and I were shopping, and we looked across the aisle, and there was one of the kids that was in our gym. Her mom and dad were there, or at least I thought it was her mom and dad, because I'd never met them. But she was one of those that were in our gym. So I said, Kath, we should go over and meet these people. So I walked over, shook hands with this guy that I thought was her dad. Sure enough, it was. And I said, hey, I'm Dane Deutsch. I'm coach of your daughter at our gym. He said, are you the one that talks about character skills on the radio? I said, oh yeah. I thought, oh, I'm gonna connect really well here, right?
Uh-huh.
His response was, you're disgusting.
What?
That was my response. So now I have a choice, right? If somebody else had been offended like that, they might have just immediately snapped back with something that wasn't good character, right?
Yeah.
And I think after a while, people, in my book, I'm really trying to get across the fact that hey, coachability is part of growing your character skills so that you act and don't react, right? Part of that character is so ingrained in you in terms of character habits that you don't react, you now act. And so my response to him was, hey, I just wanted to meet you. I pretended I hadn't even heard it, right? Plus my gym daughter is there. In our gym, all these thousands of kids we've had come through the gym over the years,
Yeah.
we call them our gym daughters and our gym sons.
Cool.
My wife and I'm the gym pa and she's the gym ma. And we're old enough now to say we're grandpa and grandma, but in reality, the bottom line is it's just a very heartfelt way to address each other in the gym. So I didn't want my gym daughter, his biological daughter, to be embarrassed by something I said, right? Because she's still my gym daughter and I need to lead by example. So I just carried on the conversation as if he never said anything.
And then what? He didn't tell
That
you
was
why?
it. And he didn't talk anymore either. So we just said thanks for allowing us to meet you, and we went our way. And that was it. I've never seen him since. But those are the kind of things I think all of us have, those kinds of opportunities, if you can say it's that. They're not necessarily a great experience, but for me it was a great experience to be able to say, yep, I've got that character skill down, right? Respect. Because I respected my daughter enough, my gym daughter enough, not to go back with some kind of, counter attack after he called me disgusting, right? I mean, that was the big thing there.
Yeah, you had to exhibit real self-control because that's not the normal, reaction.
Right.
A lot of people would get mad first and then get all in a huff, but not you. Very good.
Well, on that particular one, I mean, I'm human too, right? In my classes at the university, because I was a teacher for several years, I'm retired from there now, but I taught cyber technology ethics, but not philosophical ethics. It was character ethics. The same things that
technology ethics.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing?
There is, and since you know about ARPANET and Novell and all that, you'll get a kick out of this. You'll get a little chuckle, and that is that, hey, whenever you put out new technology, it can be used for good or bad. Doesn't matter what it is, right? Somebody can misuse it and abuse it, and somebody else can just use it the way it should be or was designed to be used, right? And that's why a lot of people go, I don't get why hackers use their talent and skill sets to do all that versus just help people. Well, that's not their mindset, right? That's not their character skills that are in play for that. But yeah, that whole thing about the IT is, even we were right on the leading edge of technology back in the 80s, all wireless in Turkey, because copper was a black market item. And my boss and I shot the first Z100 laptops across Motorola's first mobile phones in Turkey. And that was in 1987.
I don't even remember Z100. That was before my time.
It was Zenith. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. They don't make computers anymore.
They made laptops?
They made laptops in 1980, actually before I left the States. So that would have been like 1984.
Yeah.
They were already making laptops. Yeah.
All these guys before my time, like I met some cryptographers from the Navy. They are so crazy. They tell me, what do you want? What do you want? Let me know. So, I can get into the back end of Amazon. It's like, what do you mean you can get into the back end of Amazon? I know, I started ARPANET. I know how, I know and it's like crazy, man. These guys, they got a lot of knowledge. And I think you're still sitting on a lot of that knowledge. Maybe you should write another book.
I do have another book coming out, and it will be called AI, Transhumanism, and the Tricycle Effect. So we've got to balance the technology, whether it's AI or the merging of cyber and humanity together. How are we going to deal with these things like Elon Musk is putting out with the neural links? And you mentioned a couple of them right earlier before we got on the air. So a lot of challenges with dilemmas. And that's what I did in the university, was help these students to parse out, how do I take a technology and decide whether or not something is ethical or not? And how do I run that through the character skills to know that the character or virtues are going to be protected or enhanced through that, right?
Yeah, nobody has hard-coded the robot laws into ChatGPT, for example. And but before I forget, transhumanism, was that when you upload your consciousness to the computer, or when you upload because you can't upload yourself? That's the problem, right? Everybody thinks you're going to upload yourself like the Matrix, but
well, that's because we've been watching the Matrix, and the Matrix has some things that I think are coming. Okay,
like what? Like what? That was one of my favorite movies.
So
What do
I
you
think the
mean?
whole idea is that if you, some things that are coming out right now, and let me go back for a second and just talk about, we had the computer, right, by itself to begin with. Then we had local area networks that
Hmm.
were, in a building or they were maintained within one structure kind of thing.
Hmm.
Then we had wide area networks, which now we go out of that building, connect to another building, connect to another. Then we had metropolitan area networks, and now we connect cities and all this, right? Whether it's fiber or infrared or some kind of copper cables. Um, then we
Hmm.
all of a sudden end up with Internet of Bodies
Hmm.
or Internet of Things. You've probably heard of Internet of
Yes,
Things,
I've heard
right?
of Internet of Things for sure.
So we're now connecting your refrigerator, right, with a
The
panel right on
toaster.
the front of it. It
Yeah.
looks in the refrigerator and says they're low on milk and puts the milk on the list
Yeah.
automatically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That
So,
has already been hacked, by the way. The
yep,
Internet of Things. Yeah.
everything is hackable.
Yeah.
Believe me, there's nothing that is 100% secure. Nothing, and never will be, because I call that the Houdini concept. I
Hmm.
got chosen to speak at Old Dominion University in Virginia one time because I came up with this Houdini concept as a way of helping people understand that Houdini, the great magician, believed there wasn't a lock built by mankind that couldn't actually be broken into,
Hmm.
right? Or broken out of. And that's why he was great at locks.
Yeah.
Well, I say the same thing about technology. There is no technology that can't be broken through.
What
And
about?
most of the time, it's not going to be a technical thing. They're not going to try to break through the firewall or break through some antivirus. It's going to be a human factor, which is part of what I bring out in my coachability book, because that human factor is the lack of character, skills, and habits that other people have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Before we get to that, I
yeah.
see that. What about 256-bit encryption like Bitcoin?
Yeah. So, well, you have the blockchain there and all that, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
an expert on all of that, but I think we're doing a better job in some ways of locking things down. At least we're encrypting some things and so forth. But I just heard yesterday that Google brought out a new chip that I can't remember how many years it was going to take to break through, but now it's like within a couple of minutes it can do it. And so they demoed that, I think, 2 weeks ago or something like that. I don't remember what
Oh,
the
is that
chip's
their
called, but
quantum chip, the
yeah,
qubit
yep,
thing?
yep.
Something like that. Yeah.
So we're just going to keep getting technology that's faster and faster. And whenever anyone brings up a hurdle, like, hey, we're going to
Hmm.
encrypt this,
Hmm.
somebody else is going to find a way to break it. And that's the Houdini concept, right? That no matter what mankind
Yeah.
builds, somebody's going to build something else to break into it or
Do
break
you
out of
think do you think Moore's law is going to end at some point?
it. That's a good question. I actually think that Moore's law has probably already outdated in terms of, because it was all about doubling every
Mm.
so much time, right? But it's beyond doubling, right? So I don't know if they're calling it a new concept, but it's still,
It's
I
crazy.
refer to Moore's law as still that concept of doubling the speed or doubling the amount of space that you want for hard drive storage or whatever it happens to be. So yeah.
Maybe it's obsolete because you notice nobody talks about the Turing test anymore now that ChatGPT passed it. So it's like, oh, it was
Yeah,
actually a big deal, but
it
it
was.
just blew over.
Yeah, and that's a really good point there, because the idea there was that the Turing test was to test whether or not someone could tell a human from a
Mm.
robot, right?
Yeah.
And when was that? That was a long, long time ago. That was
Yeah.
not even within the
The
last 30 years.
50s, I think.
Yeah, it was way out of our time frame now.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of technology that's been developed out there that we don't know about right now, that's been out there in use for a long time.
Mm.
So there's other things, like I talked about Internet of Things. So now you have your refrigerator connected to the internet, you got your car connected to the internet, your garage door opener. It doesn't matter what it is, right? But
Yeah.
let's take that one step further to the Internet of Bodies.
What
So
what is
now,
that? Because I've
so
heard of the
now,
Internet of Things. What's
yeah.
the Internet
So
of
Internet of
Bodies?
Bodies. So if I have my Apple Watch on, it's taking my pulse and it now can report that somewhere, right? Doctors can put some kind of thing on the outside of you, some other little device to help them record what's happening with their heart pump, or what's their blood pressure, all, even the sugar levels, right? So my sister actually got a camera for an esophagus photograph. You have to swallow the camera in a little pill size form, and it
But I
takes
mean,
pictures.
she just bought it, not
No,
like a doctor.
she went to a doctor, and the
Ah,
doctor said, well, we're going to have to take, Well, instead of taking pictures from the outside of the body, why not take pictures from the inside out, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as she's swallowing this pill, it's taking pictures of the entire esophageal tract, right?
Oh wow! Like with radio waves, it's connected through Bluetooth or what?
Or near field communication. That's what I did my master's degree on, was near field
NFC.
communication. NFC,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
yes. Dangerous stuff.
Yep. Yep.
But at least it's
Well,
near.
dangerous because we've got different people using it, right?
I
So
turn it off all the time. I've already got my wallet in here, Google Wallet, but I always turn off the NFC once I'm done using it,
right.
because anybody can come by and read your stuff.
Right. So the question would be, is it really turned off when you click it off there,
Mm.
Eric?
Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
He's yeah.
He
He
still says it's still on.
he rips
Yeah.
them apart, solders everything apart, and then it's done. Yeah.
Well, and that even brings up the whole point of, what kind of a maze are we actually walking through today, right? I
Mm.
mean, right now you've got Snowden having found a lot of things that none of us even knew were out there before. Now, seemingly, many of them have come true, right? And they were factual. It wasn't something he had made up in his mind. But we have other technologies that are coming or are here right now that many people don't know about. So, you had the Internet of Bodies, okay?
Yeah.
But now we have the Internet of basically humans, because now they can put things inside our bodies without our knowledge, allegedly, that communicate between humans. So if they want to be able to know what
But
you're
wait, did you
thinking,
say now already?
yep, it's
Oh,
already
like the
happening.
camera.
But the camera's only one piece. So I'm talking about other things that float in your bloodstream and are in your body in a nanotechnology kind of sense,
Mhm.
where you don't even know that they're there, but yet they are doing the communications.
So,
And we're going to see that come out here before long, but it's already pretty well known here in the United
hmm,
States that nanotechnology is already at that level where they can insert it into your body. It'll report you don't need to get blood tests anymore. It'll tell them what the blood test
yeah, yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Who was saying that? Going to the doctor will be a thing of the past because you'll all have if you want, you'll have one of those, body trackers on, and then it'll be preventative. So you try to catch everything before you need to go to the doctor or something.
But I think we're beyond that already, Eric. You
Mm.
won't have a tracker around your wrist like an Apple Watch. It's actually going to be inside your body. If you listen to, there's a couple of different people out there. Yuval Noah Harari,
Yeah, I
who
read
is
his
the
book.
advisor to
Yeah,
Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. He'll
yeah,
tell you that surveillance was outside the body. Now surveillance is inside, under the
yeah.
skin.
Yeah, and that's the thing that now we're in the conspiracy theory area because I mean, well, the other day I had an MRI and they put contrast in your blood,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Maybe they put nanobots in my blood. I don't know. You know?
We don't know that exactly.
Yeah,
So there's a
yeah.
lot of new stuff that's coming at us. And that's going back to the coachability book. That's why we need people of character that are going to
Mm,
be solidly focused on building that foundational leadership based on character. Warren Buffett and others have done lots of different quotes out there. Very interesting to see. Stephen Covey,
mhm.
Zig Ziglar, John Maxwell, they all believe that character is a very important part of leadership. I really love John Maxwell. He wrote this book, Developing a Leader Within You, years and years ago. Recently, within the last 2 or 3 years, I think it was, he went to Developing a Leader Within You 2.0. And I noticed, everyone I've talked to, nobody else has noticed this. I'm sure there are some that have, but I haven't met them yet. Chapter 3 was titled Integrity in the first book. And the subtitle to that was An Essential Ingredient in Leadership.
Hmm.
Now with version 2, he retitled chapter 3 to Character. And the
Mhm.
subtitle is Foundation of Leadership.
So you have here biggest myth is that character is not a skill and cannot be learned or coached.
Right. That's what a lot of people believe, because they think that personality and character are the same thing, when in reality they're not.
Hmm.
Character is a skill. When we talk about and we line out what are those character skills, like trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, empathy, loyalty, again, those things, if you want to be more loyal, you practice loyalty. You want to be more respectful, you practice respect. You want to be more caring, you practice care. And that practice is a coach word, right? I mean, so the
Yeah.
bottom line is that we have to practice those character skills until they become habitual. They become our habits. You know, James Clear and other people have written books on habits.
Yep.
But very few people actually address character skills as developing to the point of becoming a character habit. And I just love it that John and others, even Schwarzkopf basically is saying, hey, we went in, he was the general that took us into the first Gulf War, right?
Yep.
And bottom
Norman,
line is,
right?
yeah, Norman. And he's basically saying, you know what, if you have to be without one thing, strategy or integrity or character, I can't remember how the quote exactly went. He said, be without the strategy. And the reason for that is that every single team or unit that goes into war or goes into a game like football, your best laid out plans are going to go to pot within the first couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Now
There's
you're
many
playing.
quotes about that too.
Yes. And now you're playing by your gut feel, right? If you
Mhm.
don't have those character habits in place, then you're not going to be making good decisions based on what's the best for my team or the outcome at the end. Yeah.
Right. So the Pareto distribution, the 80% is character.
Yeah, in reality, it should be. Yep, absolutely.
You know, that almost fits to your tricycle because the biggest wheel is the character wheel, and then you have the other ones. I could get 80% out of that. Yeah.
Well, now think about it. Most people are riding around on trikes with a huge technical wheel in the back, right? A smaller people skill
Me,
wheel
yeah.
and an almost non-existent front character wheel.
Well, I
So,
hope I have some of that. Yeah.
so
But yeah.
the for a coach, especially in gymnastics, I love that word balance. And that's not a very balanced ride, right? I
No.
mean, you want to build that technical skill and the people skill so that they're about the same size, but really hone in and focus on building your character skills.
So this is the thing, the technical thing. It's maybe you've noticed the divide or the difference between men and women because men like are technicians, mechanics
Yeah.
and stuff. And I found it very hard to get out of the technical mindset. But women are people, right? So have you noticed a big difference, or you have to adjust to coach them, right?
Yep, I do have to adjust to coach them. And we have boys on our girls team. They get actually scored and they get their award separate from the ladies, the young ladies on our team. But there's a difference totally. The boys much more aggressive, doesn't think about things before they do it. The girls, they're always thinking, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. Their brain is running ahead of what their decision making. But for the boys, they're a little behind on that. But they're much stronger in some cases. They just don't know how to use their strength yet, right? So it's very interesting. I had a very interesting discussion last night with some parents in our gym because, one moment you could be fine. The next moment, all these monkeys or, some people might call them monsters, come into your brain, and all of a sudden something that you were doing just fine, you can't do anymore, right? Happens in business too. CEOs having to make a decision. Oh yeah, I've done this all along, but you know what? Now I'm really afraid of that because of what happens if, right? We have
Yeah.
so much self-talk going on in our brain. I devote a large portion of the coaching yourself in my coachability book to how do you flip those scripts? And I like the word flip because it's gymnastics again, right?
Yeah,
You got to
yeah.
flip that script. As soon as we recognize that we're talking to ourselves about like fear, hey, my hand might slide off. Now you're no longer focused on actually accomplishing the skill. And I do a lot in there about coaching to help people understand that if you're thinking the negative, like don't fall on beam, you're not focused on what you need to be doing. You're focused on what you don't want to be doing. And as soon as you do that, you're most likely going to fall, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting. I'll share one more thing with you. My coach
Sure.
was an Olympian, and he did his doctoral dissertation out of the University of Minnesota, and it was on visualization.
Ah, yeah.
When he got all done, his bottom line was is that for every time, and this goes back to kind of the matrix thing when you and I talked about that earlier, the ability to visualize yourself, if you do it well with all of your senses, right? I can feel the bar, I can smell the chalk, and as I glide or swing through, I can feel the air, I hear my teammates. All of that vividness allows you to be able to do, if you do one virtual routine vividly like that, that allows you to do the equivalent without even touching the bars of 5 physical routines.
Really?
So it's amazing. I mean, if you walk in my gym at any one point, I talk about this in my book. So I'm trying to get the people to understand you don't need 40 to 45 hours to grow good athletes in the gym. We do less than 20 hours with our level 8s through 10. Our competitors are doing 40 to 45 hours. They don't even go to school. They get private tutors, and they'll go a couple times on the weekends even. We don't do that. We want our kids to be kids, right?
Yeah.
But if you walk in my gym at any one point, you look over by the bar area, if I'm in there with my optional kids, you'll see them they're laying down around the bars, wherever they want to lay down, and they look like they're asleep. They're visualizing their routine. They do one physical routine, then they lay down and they visualize that same routine. If they made a mistake in the last one, they correct it in their visualization, then run through a good routine, and they're back to the chalk box ready to go again.
Interesting. I've never seen that.
Yep. So I go through all of that in the book, and a lot of that is based on something that was just intriguing as all get out. You and my brain does not need an exact duplicate of something to believe it. Did you ever go to the any movie where there is a cartoon character in it, like Pete's Dragon, and then then you've got the Robert Redford playing the real character, but you got a dragon in the forest. First couple of minutes, it looks really hokey, but after that, your brain just adapts, right?
Yeah,
so,
I was thinking more of Pinocchio or something. I don't remember Pete's Dragon.
Well, yeah. Well, Pete's Dragon they just inserted a cartoonish kind of dragon into the real scenes, right?
Oh, okay, now I remember. Yeah.
And your brain would initially doesn't want to accept it, but you watch it long enough, all of a sudden you accept it all. And you leave, you go, oh, I like that movie. Yeah, why? But nobody's going to see a cartoon dragon in the woods, right? Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, because our brain, we're talking virtual, that's an IT term, right?
Yep.
Our brain does not need an exact replica. It only needs to approximate, and it's good enough.
It sounds like what I was going to ask you about. What do you think about Lanny Basham's book? He talks about visualization too.
Yeah, I haven't read his book, honestly, but I mean, most people, there's quite a few books out there on it, but a lot of people will talk about it, but not actually put it into practice. It's a whole different ballgame when you got to practice it, right? As an example, I learned a lot of this from my mom, having read a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. Psycho-Cybernetics was written by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. He was he did a lot of surgeries for face. He's a cosmetic surgeon, I think, for scars and things like that. And the one thing that he noticed was that he'd get done with surgery for one of his clients or his patients, and they'd come back and he'd say, well, it looks really good now. That scar's gone. There's not even a hint that it's there. And the patient was saying, it's still there. What are you talking about? In their mind, they still saw the scar.
But it wasn't there.
But it wasn't there. He never did anything to move their brain to the point where the scar, he just fixed the physical scar. That would be the technical wheel in the Tricycle Effect, right?
Yeah.
He fixed the scar, but he didn't fix their image of themselves. Okay. And so therefore, they still saw the scar and were unhappy. Crazy. So he had to go back. He realized that later, as a plastic surgeon, he had to go back and actually fix the mindset as well. And that goes right back to the visualization, right? I'll give you a real true example of that. After I read that Psycho-Cybernetics book, I was a wrestler in Minnesota.
A wrestler?
A wrestler. In ninth grade.
Like competition wrestling or world WF?
No. Real competition in high school, right? In school, right? Wrestler, yeah. No, I was never WWF. But I was like, hey, I'm wrestling. I would visualize every single match before I ever walked out on the mat. And I would feel where that person's body weight was on me, and I would already know which skill they were going to actually, what trick or move they were going to make on me, right?
Yeah.
And so I took the state championship in ninth grade at 145 pounds in AAU. And It was primarily because I visualized every single match before it started.
Nice.
So, and the same thing in business.
Yeah.
I can tell you in one case, I was sitting at a Hardee's. I looked across the street, past another block, and there was an empty field there. And I said, man, it'd be really nice if I could just build a building over there and put my IT company in there. 8 years later, it was there in that same spot. So this coachability thing isn't just coaching physical skills. It's coaching the ability to visualize what you want in the end result. What is it that you want to be, do, or accomplish, right? And too often we're chasing after the success things. And in the infographic that I have that you could pass out or offer to your listeners is those back two wheels I call the success wheels. They're called competence wheels, technical and people skills.
Mhm.
The character wheel is called the significance wheel because that wheel is all about adding value to others. The success wheel is more about adding value to ourselves. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I've got your book. And well, tell us more of your success stories or nightmare clients or.
So I'll give you an example in Turkey because Turkey was pretty, it was, I mean, there were some areas, especially when you go to eastern side of Turkey, Mount Ararat, it's pretty like we could go back 200 years here in the United States, right? Maybe more.
Wow.
So pretty, I think there's a lot of structure out there that's missing, and people heat their food and heat their homes. Heat their food meaning they start a fire with their cow dung or their sheep dung and that kind of thing. It's pretty primitive, really, in a lot of ways. Well, when I got to Ankara, I was a 2-year captain, as I mentioned. So some people didn't really appreciate that fact that I was a 2-year captain in a colonel slot. And 2 of my own sergeants didn't like that very well either. And all of a sudden, one day after I'd been there about a year, I had a one striper airman come up to my office, and I had an open door policy. And he came in, he said, "Captain, can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Sure, come on in." He sat down. He said, "Have you heard about Sergeant B?" I said, "No." What's happening with Sergeant B? He said, "Well, you know what? Here in Turkey, the landlords can turn off the heat anytime. So his family's been coming to the base every single day. And his wife and kids just roam between the commissary, the BX, the Fayed building. They take showers here and all that. And they don't go home until they're ready to go to bed." And that was pretty much it. He didn't ask me to do anything. He didn't say anything. He just gave me that information. Now, if I wasn't a person of good character, I could have just said, "Well, it's not my responsibility. That's his private life," right? And immediately I was like, "Well, I can't do that. I mean, I've got kids at home. I got 4 kids at home. My wife, I know there's no insulation in these buildings in Turkey. That's why they have Turkish rugs, right? You got to stay warm somehow."
Yeah.
So bottom line is that I went to BX, got a plastic container, went down to the pumps, gas area, and got a whole bunch of kerosene. Went and bought a brand new kerosene heater. And then I had to find his house. Without asking anybody else or telling him what I was doing, I went out to his house, knocked on the door, and his wife was home. And the kids came out the door right away, and they were holding her leg, and I could see they got conjunctivitis in their eyes. Their noses are running, and it was freezing cold. She and I are talking, and you could see our talk, the mist in the air. Yeah. So I said, "Well, it'd be okay if I bring in a kerosene heater. I've got one for you. We can warm up your house, and it'll feel a lot better." She said, "Oh, please." So I did. Well, kerosene, when you first light up a new kerosene heater, it gives off fumes, right? I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to kill his family." So you got to open the windows, which sounds crazy, but you got to open the windows and leave them open for an hour or so. And then you can close them and all those fumes will be gone and you'll be fine.
Yeah, you got to have good ventilation, right? It's got to go out the top. Otherwise, no oxygen.
Exactly. And then you could die from it. So I was really kind of worried about that, but I told her what to do. She did it. And I left. Oh my goodness. The next couple of days, people were coming to my office thanking me for what I'd done for Sergeant B. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't want anything. And then he finally came to my office. He said, "Captain, I want to pay you for the kerosene heater." I said, "You know what? It's on loan to you. You just take it. You can have it. And use it as long as you need to until winter's done." But the amount of emotional bank account that I built up with that one incident that I had no idea what I was doing. I was just doing it because it was the right thing to do at the right time, for the right reason, right? That's the courage in the seat. Don't care what anyone else thought. Somebody might think that I'm trying to motivate him with a free kerosene heater or something. I mean, I just got rid of all that. I just did what was right for another human, right?
Yeah.
And that was amazingly a powerful moment in my life that I hadn't even planned on. And I have to go back and give credit to that one striper airman that had the audacity and the courage to come into my office, right?
Yeah. Nice. That's a cool story. I have to jump around a bit though, because I see you got the forward by Tom Ziegler. How did you do that?
I'm a Zig Ziglar coach. Loved
Nice,
Zig for
nice.
all these years. And
One of
his
my
whole,
favorite.
oh my goodness, his quote on, if you help enough other people get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. But first, you're focused on them, right? Not asking or expecting in return. That's one of the things that I taught in my university class was the golden rule. Do unto others, you would have them do unto you. It was interesting because every culture in the world, I didn't know this until I started teaching there, and John Maxwell brings this out in one of his books as well. Every culture has a golden rule.
Hmm.
It
Is
may
it the
actually
same?
be called the platinum rule, but it's still a type of golden rule, right? And it might be a different name for it, but it's still the same thing. And so pretty amazing, actually. And so, that was what Zig lived by. And so I wanted to be one of his coaches. And I
Cool.
got certified. And so I called Tom and I said, Tom, would you do me the honor of writing the foreword to my book? I've got your
Nice.
dad quoted in there in a couple places. And I've been certified already by you. And he had endorsed my coaching and all that kind of thing. So that's what we did. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, he's one of my favorite speakers also, and got a couple of his things. Yeah, right on.
Yep.
What I'm looking at your book, and there's a lot of cool things in here. The first person we have to be able to coach is ourselves.
Yep.
However, I don't think most people know that. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, so in the gym with all these young athletes, we're teaching them that they have to coach themselves first. So that self-talk in the mind is one of those. Visualizing where you want to go with something is another. I mean, right now we have a level 9 gymnast that does less than 20 hours a week.
So
And
level 9 is good.
level 9, there's 10 levels before the kids you see on TV,
Ah,
right?
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's 10 levels. She's a level 9 and she's just turned 12 years old. Very talented. But we just went to a meet over in Minnesota at a university last weekend, and she placed third on bars.
Nice.
So this little brand new 12-year-old doing big skills on the bars, but doesn't think twice about most of them because she's already visualized it. She already knows where she's going and what she's doing.
Yeah.
So I had to train the head as hard as we train the body, or
Yeah,
actually in
nice.
some cases because of visualization more so, right?
Yeah, but that was probably a big deal for her to get third place.
Oh yeah, absolutely was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of funny because there's the technology piece, right? Google, I came home, uploaded a picture to Google, my Google Photos, because I'd taken them automatically synced with Google Photos. Well, then Google sends me a little video with all of her stuff because it now has facial recognition, right? Went
Yeah.
back through all my photos and put together a little 1.5-minute video with her from the time she was with us 3 years ago until today.
Awesome. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Google Photos too.
Yeah.
Of course, then you have to wonder how much information are you giving them, you know?
Well, that's the whole point of it, right? I mean, privacy and all that. In the day when we started ARPANET in Turkey and we were shooting those Zenith laptops, my people put in the first email server in all of Europe and the Mediterranean. And even though we
Wow.
were on the Asiatic side,
What year was that?
1987.
That was the first
1987.
email server, huh?
Yeah, well,
Wow.
for us, because this is military now, I'm not talking about
Ah,
commercial sector now, right?
well,
So we served even the NATO units at that time.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think they were first too. I think
Yep.
the military got it
Oh,
first
yeah.
before anybody did.
Yep.
So,
But in those
yeah.
days, you didn't have any domains, right? Like there
Oh,
was
yeah.
no
Yeah.
zanebooks.com, right?
Yeah, right,
That
right.
never existed.
Yeah,
I mean,
because that's the World Wide Web, right?
exactly.
That's
That came
not
later.
internet.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. That came later.
Yeah.
At the time when we were doing the email, you might have maybe a 10 or 12 letter email address that has no @ sign in it, right?
Huh.
And you don't even really know who it goes to because it's got no name on it.
Huh.
It's just a funny little story behind that. I moved, I was 5 years in Turkey. We moved from Incirlik, which I was the assistant chief of maintenance for the country. And then we moved to Izmir, where I was the commander for a year and a half. And then we ended up at Ankara, where I was the chief of maintenance. Well, when I got to Ankara, I already had 3 years underneath my belt, right? I already knew what was going on in the country and so forth. And it was just amazing because in this particular instance, things that I would know, the new colonel didn't know because he didn't have any experience with it, right? Well, that happened with lots of different things. And so, we put in the first email server and all that. And I had kept a whole bunch of messages before email was out. They came physical messages, right? And they weren't classified. But I'd kept them because when I left Incirlik to go to Izmir, that was only supposed to be temporary, ended up being permanent. And then I went to Ankara. Well, I had all those messages. My very first conference, it was a briefing for the colonel. People were telling me, well, we got all this stuff up here in the Army sites. And I was like, no, we don't. They go, what are you talking about? I said, we gave all that away 2 years ago. And they said, no, we haven't. We're still doing all the maintenance for it. I said, well, I've got messages. And so I had to put a timeline together for that. And I wrote this 12-character email address, wherever it was, right? And told them they owed the Air Force $16 million per year for 2 years. Because
Cool.
the Army was supposed to have taken it over, and they didn't. And the Air Force kept it, but they weren't under contract. So bottom line was the Army owed us basically $32 million.
Pay the bill, bucko.
After I sent that, I didn't realize it was a 2-star general that I'd sent the message to. So he went to my European command commander. That flowed down to Italy or to Spain to my wing commander, and the wing commander, then it rolled down to my group commander, and then he came in my office and said, boy, Dane, you better be right. So I had to put this little timeline together to explain all the things that were happening. And then the colonel was just like beside himself. He was like, he's trusting me implicitly. Here I am, a 2-year captain in a colonel slot, and he's trusting me that what I was doing in this paper with the timeline was spot on. The general in Ankara gave us his Learjet and his pilots, and he flew us to Istanbul to meet with the Army.
Yeah.
And when we got there, the Army colonel said, you report in. That means my colonel and I have to go stand in front of his desk and salute him, right?
Yeah.
And then he said, have a seat, boys. And then he said, so what's going on with this thing? What's happening? It was a pretty gruff voice, right? And I'm like, holy crap, I'm in trouble now. So I started to talk to him, and it was just a couple of minutes. He said, okay, I've heard enough now. Silence. And then he said, time for breakfast. So we left the office, we went to breakfast, came back, we had to salute again. He said, okay, boys, the check's in the mail. Have a good day.
Oh.
That was the end of the meeting.
Nice. How many million?
I think it was like 32 million. It was 16 million a year to contract for all those services that were up there. Something like that. It was a crazy number. And even if it had only been 16
back
million,
in the 80s.
Oh my goodness.
What is it? Times
crazy.
5?
Yeah, probably by now.
Times 2. Yeah. Crazy.
So it ended up being a big deal, and the colonel, I think he got a lot of kudos for that because he ended up looking pretty doggone good when it was all done, and we got that much more money back from the Army.
Did you get a promotion?
So I already had a promotion, but it was towards the end of my 2 years there, and I found out my dad was dying, and so I resigned my regular commission and my reserve commission